So it's a little different between baseball and basketball, but I'm kind of known in the industry, I think, as a prepaholic. I do a lot. So let's say, for instance, a college basketball game, like I did the two of them last night. You've got game notes from each team, which are, and that's the same in baseball. Teams, schools put out game notes, which are incredibly important. Whether it's baseball or basketball, I will try to watch games leading up to that game. So it's a little bit tougher, Duke and Kentucky, that was their first game of the season, obviously, so I didn't get a chance to see them, but I've got UCLA and Villanova Friday night. They've each played a game at some point today or tomorrow. I will watch those games. You go to practice the day before, if it's college basketball, talk to coaches, try to get players, whatever information. And then the internet it's a giant rabbit hole. It's an endless rabbit hole of information. So in baseball, I would be on Baseball Reference, Fangraphs, Baseball Savant, you name it, just looking up things that interest me. Basketball's not quite as, I maybe don't dive into the deep stats as much in basketball as I do in baseball, but I'm going for articles then. So if I'm doing a Kentucky game, I'll go to the Lexington newspaper and get what I can get there. I'll go to sites like ESPN.com, The Athletic, and just try CBS Sports, Sporting News. There are various columnists that I really like. And I've got file folders of articles for dozens of college basketball teams and every baseball team. And I read them, I stick them in there, and I read them again before I do the game. So it's a lot of different stuff, but I enjoy the preparation. It takes a lot of time, and I'm sure I do it in a very archaic, ancient way, not like you guys would do it. You guys would probably be much more efficient than I am, but this is the only way I know how to do it. I think it's more. So when I started, you guys weren't even born when I started. There was no internet when I started. I know that's like an insane thing to think about, but there was no internet. So if I was doing an Iowa-Michigan basketball game, on a Saturday, I would fly down Friday morning and go to practice. And when I got to practice Friday, the Michigan SID, Sports Information Director, would hand me game notes. And that would be the first time that I would really be able to know anything about Michigan, unless a game happened to be on CBS. Because back then, there were no, Rogers Cable, the 430s and the 440s, that didn't exist, So unless a game was on CBS, I couldn't see it. There was no internet, so there was nowhere to go to Iowa's website and get their information. So now there's just so much more information. So I definitely prepare more, but a constant challenge is to be efficient and to not spend too much time doing stuff that you're not going to use. Again, because there are so many different resources. And even now, I've been doing this 27 years or something like that. Even now, year to year, I'm still figuring things out. A little more of this, so that's good. I can incorporate that. I don't really use this. Maybe that, that falls by the wayside. So I would say I'm doing more. Like for this week, for example. So as you guys know, I did 2 games last night. Today I'm flying to LA. Friday I've got Villanova, UCLA. Saturday I'm flying to Syracuse. Sunday I've got Drexel, Syracuse. Monday I'm flying to Houston. Tuesday I've got Virginia, Houston. Wednesday I fly home and do laundry. That's what the next week looks like. And so every day, like for the last hour before you guys called, I started doing my charts for the next 2 games, because the producer of the Syracuse game, which is 2 games away from me, but she wants to talk tomorrow about some things that might come up in the game on Sunday. So I've kind of got to have a working knowledge of what's going on with Drexel and Syracuse before I do that. So I kind of treat it like each game is like a final exam, and you just cram and cram and cram. And as soon as it's over, it's gone, and you move on to the next one. Well, I haven't had to do that in a long time. To be honest with you, I have only done baseball and basketball in the last 23, 24 years. So that's a kind of a difficult question for me to answer. But like tomorrow, if Sportsnet said to me, hey, we'd like you to do tennis, the first thing I would do is try to call somebody and say, okay, how should I prepare for tennis? And again, the internet is great. I can look up, anything that I want. I can find out what Denis Shapovalov results were over the last year, 2 years, 3 years. But I don't know how to do my charts and my notes for tennis, if that makes sense. Like I've got a specific way of getting my my charts together for basketball, and I've got a specific way of doing it for baseball. So I think the hardest thing wouldn't actually be the research. It would be organizing the information in a way that I could easily find it during the event. Because one thing I've always made sure to avoid is I don't want to be one of these announcers who's looking down at his or her notes while the game's going on. Then you miss something. And I can tell fairly easily, I think, when I'm watching somebody who's reading off their notes and not watching the game. You got to watch the game. You can get to the note at the whistle or at the inning break or whatever. So I think the hardest thing would be organizing that information. So if I were to do a sport I'd never done before, I probably also, would call a friend in the industry who's done that sport and say, do you have an hour? Can we Zoom? I need some help here. So I think it would be organizing the info. That would be the hardest thing. You just have to kind of trust your instincts a little bit. So in the playoffs, I'm trying to remember what it was, a Houston game, Houston, Boston in the ALCS. I was doing it for ESPN radio, and Luis Garcia was the pitcher for Houston and didn't have a good first inning. And in the second inning faced one batter and then called the catcher out, and the catcher called the manager out, and the manager called the trainer out, and Garcia left the game. And Dusty Baker went to Jake Odorizzi, who was a starting pitcher, but was working as a reliever in the playoffs. Because Jake Odorizzi was not warmed up, and because there was an injury, and because he's not a reliever and he doesn't know how to warm up fast, he went through his whole starter's routine. It was a 26-minute delay until the next pitch was thrown. And we might have had 2 breaks we threw to, so that might be 4 minutes total. So we filled 22 minutes on the radio, not even on TV, no pictures helping us. So that's a little bit extreme. That doesn't happen every day, obviously. But that's when you just trust your knowledge of the teams and the sport, and you rely on your analyst. And it's almost like I start interviewing the analyst a little bit. And I was with Eduardo Perez, and, Eddie, have you ever been in a situation like this? What's it like for a starter to come in this kind of a situation? How important is it to get his warm up in, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And you just keep talking, basically. I couldn't do it about very many things. In fact, baseball and basketball might be the only 2 things in the world that I could do that about. But that's why, one of the questions I get asked is, how many hours a day do you prepare? And that's a question I can't really answer, because even if I don't have a game, I'm preparing for the next game or the next game or the next game. And even if it's teams that I may not be covering. So if we have a delay in the shot clock goes out at Madison Square Garden, and now we got 6 minutes till we have to fill. Well, we've got Duke. Why don't we talk about, where does Duke rank in the ACC? Do you like Carolina? Do you like Florida State? Do you like Virginia? So I've got to be a little bit prepared on those teams as well. So it all goes back to your preparation. The more you prepare, the better you're going to sound and look when you get into those kinds of situations. That's a good question. I do have nerves every now and again, not very often. I've been doing this a long time. So my first time on the fan when I was 24, I was terrified. My first Blue Jay game when I was 28, I was terrified. My first ESPN game when I was also 28, I was terrified. You combat it by trying not to sweat too much on camera, if possible, because that tells everybody that you're nervous. But you just keep telling yourself, whoever they are, they gave me this opportunity because they think I deserve it. So like, I'm here for a reason. I didn't win a contest to get here. Somebody thinks I'm good enough to be here. But I'm sure it's much the same as an athlete. When a kid gets called up from AAA to make his major league debut, and all of a sudden, instead of playing in front of 2,000 people, he's playing in front of 30,000 people, and he's on national television. That's got to be nerve-wracking for him as well. And I think, the broadcasters are the same way. So I try to combat it by saying, somebody gave me the job, I deserve to be here. And when in doubt, go a little bit slower. I think people, when they get nervous, they rush. And I think one thing that's really important is just slow down. And the last thing would be, keep it simple. Like, don't go into your first baseball game ever and, try to reinvent the wheel and get noticed. Just do the job. Don't hit a home run, just get a base hit. Keep it simple, get through the first game, go have a glass of wine to calm your nerves down, and then do the next one tomorrow. Yeah. So it's funny, when I was your age, I wasn't studying journalism or broadcasting. I was a math major. And my voice was exactly the same, I think, as it then as it was now. And it was only when I got into broadcasting when some people said, "Hey, you've got a decent voice. You got a good voice for broadcasting." So I've never done anything to train it. Really, it's just the voice I have. But like you said, if anything, I have to make sure. Well, at the beginning of my career, I think I was a little bit too monotone. I don't think I got up enough in the big moments. As I've gotten older, I think if anything, I have to pull back a little bit. And like I don't sit in, with my phone and practice calls and listen back to them. But I do still, I don't know if air check is a term that is still used, but I do still air check myself every now and again, not every game. But it's pretty easy to find your stuff on the internet or tape a game at home. And I won't watch all 9 innings or the whole college basketball game, but I might go to a specific moment and just listen to that 30 seconds or that minute and a half to hear how I sounded. So I think some of it comes with experience. When I do this, it sounds like that. Even if it doesn't sound like that in the moment, that's what it sounds like when I play it back on TV. So it's a bit of muscle memory, again, just like an athlete. A little bit. So, but in the heat of the moment, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know that Jose Bautista is going to hit a home run and flip his bat. So you can't anticipate everything. It's live TV without a script, which is to me the best part about it. You don't know what's going to happen next. I've done a little bit of studio stuff, a little bit of tape stuff. And they're different. And to be honest with you, I'm not nearly as good at that stuff. And I know most people find that easier than the stuff that I do, but I'm not any good at that stuff. I like the uncertainty and the in the moment and the spontaneity, and that's what really drives it for me. Yeah, I mean, people are getting their content in all kinds of different places. It's not just our industry. I have a son your age, and he's trying to do what you guys do. He's down at Syracuse, and again, when I grew up, there was TV and radio, and now whether you're on TikTok or YouTube or you're blogging or Instagram or Twitter, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, there are so many different ways to create content and consume content, and that's good. And people my age have to understand that we have to cater also to people your age. And you know what? One day you guys are going to be the old guys and you're going to have to cater to the next generation. And who knows how they'll be getting their content. So yeah, the more ways, the better. Like when I was a kid, the Leaf game came on at 8 o'clock, not 7, at 8 o'clock Saturday night. And I sat in front of the TV for 3 hours and I watched the Leaf game. Nobody does that anymore. You're on your phone, you're on your iPad, you're on your laptop, you're doing a million different things. You've got picture in picture going. So yeah, this is the way it is. There are so many more ways to get content, and I think you don't have to be a traditional TV person or radio person or anymore. However you can reach an audience, that's the way you should do it. So this question I get asked a lot. So I've got my usual answer. I'm going to give you 3, if that's okay. One is don't get into the business to be rich or famous. If you become rich and famous, great, but don't get into the business to be rich and famous. Get into the business because you want to get into the business, and it's because what your heart is telling you to do. 2 is understand sacrifices have to be made. That might mean working overnights. That might mean moving. That might mean starting off in news, even though you want to get into sports. That might mean any one of a dozen different things. There are a lot of people who want to get into the industry. There are no guarantees. And understand that your life is not going to be generally speaking, will not be a typical normal 9 to 5 kind of life if this is the career that you choose. And the third one is be a good teammate. So the Duke Kentucky game I did last night, Jay Billis was the analyst, Holly Rowe was the reporter, Mike Royd was the director, Eric Mosley was the producer, Dave Corris was the statistician, their audio guys and tape operators and cameramen and women, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They all matter. They're all important, and they're your teammates. And it doesn't matter, like if you think about a hockey team, if you're the first line center or the fourth line center, treat everybody the same. Everybody's important. Get to know everybody's names. Understand it's not about any one person on the broadcast. It's about the show as a whole. And so do what you can to make the show better. Don't make it about yourself. Just being a really good teammate is important.